Thank you, Ambassador Devre. I think you have made a fairly large menu, and I was particularly impressed by the last point which you made. I wish we could discuss it more, because, and if you permit me, I would say that more than democracy and diversity, it is the challenge in the region which will shape India-ASEAN relations. And the challenge in the region is characterized by a rising and assertive China and a reassertive or reasserting United States. And both will have problems. The indications and signs of those are already visible. But India, despite the economic interdependence which everybody talks with China, is quite uncomfortable on how China deals with India's specific neighbors and how the pending disputes and problems are taken care of. ASEAN, again, despite the huge economic benefits which they derive out of their engagement with China, are really concerned, and I think Phnom Penh brought it out very, very clearly, that if there is a direct clash of interest between ASEAN, any of the countries of the ASEAN, and Chinese interest in the region, the Chinese have the capacity and the will to probably drive the wedge amongst the ASEAN countries as deep as they can. They have not succeeded fully in the first attempt, but what we are witnessing is only the beginning. Therefore, the challenges before both these countries are actually fairly deep and complex. And much of their relationship will be shaped by how these challenges are met. I leave the session open, and you're welcome to raise your questions, comments, doubts, whatever. Please be crisp and short.
My name is Khalid Siva. I'm concerned about when we talk about the regional relationships, especially India's relationship with ASEAN. There seems to be sort of an unsaid thing that this could be to counter possible Chinese domination in the region. Now, me coming from one of your neighbors, Sri Lanka, where we have had a very close relationship with China for more than 30 years now. And today, most Sri Lankans see that relationship as a win-win situation. Not exactly something directed towards India, though very often we hear from India a different version coming out. If we are going to look at Asia as a whole, and Asia having a voice in international affairs, both China and India has to be partners. And why can't we see SAARC and ASEAN coming together, rather than India and ASEAN, along with China, to build an Asian voice, Asian community? What is your reward?
Yeah, sure. Maybe two more observations. Yeah. No? Yeah.
One of the ways in which India-South Asia ASEAN relation could be taken forward is maybe working together with Myanmar, and in fact that has sometimes been a block, but now that situation changed, there's an opportunity. What are the areas in which or what are the sectors or the ways in which you can see India and ASEAN can work together in Myanmar?
A very quick point. You mentioned Indo-Pacific. Interestingly, earlier this month, Australia brought out its white paper, and that is where they claim that the term is an invention, largely to actually discount the earlier government's Asia Pacific. Now, you of course, there's a definitional exclusion of Australia from the balance that you have drawn, but physically or literally, is that possible? I mean, in the kind of paradigm that you have drawn in the relationship between ASEAN and India, largely because Australia will force itself upon the stage So you will probably have to consider Australia also, in much the same way as our friend has said. I mean, we are looking at is just dichotomizing India, ASEAN from the rest of relationship in the whole region, maybe something difficult, both intellectually and diplomatically.
Yes. India-ASEAN convergence or coming together is not directed against a other power. It has been always made very clear, because India has its bilateral relations with China. ASEAN, it has bilateral relations, but all the 10 countries of ASEAN have bilateral relations. And we are all very realistic that to manage the affairs of Asia, our own affairs with each other, we have to have excellent mechanisms which exclude actually conflict or violence. And therefore, India and ASEAN coming together does not in any way include a kind of a counter against China. That is absolutely clear. And I don't imply that, I don't state that at all. What you said, that you have a win-win situation with China, in many ways we do have. But we have certain issues with China, which we need to put on the table, just as the Chinese are also prepared to do so. And in fact, lately there has been discussion that this border dispute between India and China, in fact on the Chinese side also, as the press reports indicate, there is a new urgency to resolve this dispute as early as possible. So it is nowadays abundantly made clear that we must have this border situation calm and peaceful, which is in fact contingent on our good relations and cooperation between each other. So that is something which should be the basis for the future. If SAARC and China, SAARC and Southeast Asia were to come together, it is an excellent, there is no difference of view on that. We have all tried to work together, but the entire SAARC has not shown so far that kind of readiness or preparedness. For example, the India-ASEAN FTA, which has been signed after nearly 6-7 years of negotiations, that kind of exercise has not been done between SAARC and Southeast Asia, ASEAN. But when it is possible to have a SAARC kind of level agreements with Southeast Asia, India will be always ready. I don't think India has any objection to that.
Just one, on that question of SAARC and ASEAN coming together. Now, for example, the view from Sri Lanka, for example, I don't know about the other SAARC members, is that India goes directly to ASEAN and East Asia, never tries to bring others along. So it should be India's responsibility as sort of a leader of SAARC to bring others along as well.
One of the reasons could be that within SAARC, we did not have consensus on a number of issues. Even on trading arrangements, some of the basic things, for example, the MFN. MFN is the fundamental requirement between two countries for normal trade. We do not have MFN with all the SAARC countries so far. Now, how do we, without that kind of MFN requirement, negotiate with SAARC, with ASEAN, a free trade agreement? Maritime security, if we are going to discuss, Convention on Terrorism. We have our own problems. We must resolve our own problems first, on which we have no difficulty of continuing negotiations and discussion within SAARC. But pending that, we cannot really negotiate with ASEAN. So that is the problem. Otherwise, India will be quite prepared because, for example, we have the BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC is virtually a kind of a grouping of willing countries which want to have cooperation with fellow members of ASEAN. Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal on one side on South Asia. We have 5 countries from South Asia and Thailand and Myanmar from Southeast Asia. So there is a grouping like this which in fact should make much greater progress than it has done so far. So if there are such groupings or mechanisms available, certainly India, I think, I agree with you, India has a responsibility, India should not shun that responsibility. With respect to Myanmar, I think Myanmar opens great opportunities for both. I recall Singapore in the early 90s made major investments in Myanmar. And India has, of course, very long traditional relationship with Myanmar. We have hundreds of thousands of people of Indian origin still in Myanmar. So what has now happened in the last 2 years in Myanmar is a matter of great happiness and promise to both. The sectors in which India and Myanmar can work together, A is of course connectivity. Now, despite the proximity, we do not have good links between Myanmar, India and Southeast Asia. Now, the trilateral highway which is being built between Thailand, India and Myanmar, that needs to be completed. There should be joint work between the 3 countries. Recently, India has proposed that there should be a highway linking Vietnam to India, which will go through Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and then to India. So, connectivity, both physical as well as cyber, as well as air connectivity, these are absolutely essential areas. Other projects could be in the field of energy, because Myanmar is a very rich resource in hydrocarbon as well as gas and also hydroelectric power. So India is short of power, Bangladesh is also short of power. We can all work together in that direction. Fourthly, capacity building. Myanmar is still, 20-30 years behind other ASEAN countries. And Myanmar's skills, though one time very high, in the 50s, you will be surprised. Bangkok was a kind of a village and Rangoon was the city. So it is unbelievable. But Myanmar has lagged behind so much that they require skills in everything, whether it is education, whether it is IT, whether it is small and medium industries, energy. So I think that countries of ASEAN, for example, Singapore and India can have joint projects in ASEAN, in Myanmar. Singapore and India ran a few projects in CLMV countries, in Cambodia and Laos, if I am not mistaken, on English language. And so those ran effectively. Similarly, we can do like that in Myanmar. So there is a long list of things which we can do actually. The field of democracy itself, the parliamentary system, and a number of practices which Myanmar are looking for, and countries like Indonesia, India, we can all work together in Myanmar in this particular area. Australia, no. Australia is not being excluded. Australia is now very much part of this Indo-Pacific. So when we talk of India, ASEAN and coming together of all these countries in this region, Australia is very much part of it. In fact, the Indian Ocean Rim concept, the IOR Association for Regional Cooperation, this year Australia is a chairperson, last chairperson was India, and the next one will be Indonesia. So Australia again is on the Pacific as well as in the Indian Ocean, and Australia's proximity to Indonesia and ASEAN, Australia's concerns for maritime security, all those are shared by India. In fact, Australia, Indonesia and India are even nowadays talking of working together on a project, on a number of projects. in this region, and particularly under the IWAT premises. So I think Australia has now, over the years, recognized the need to be fully associated with this region. As a democracy, Indonesia and ASEAN, Indonesia and Australia have also now grown closer in many ways. And India and Australia have different, various bonds which also bring them together. I think some of the issues which were bedeviling Australia-India relations are also behind us now. So I see new and more promising era between India and Australia in the coming years.
We have a second round. If please, I'll come in. Sure.
Yeah,
May I just respond to
Yeah.
my Sri Lankan friend? Sri Lanka was about to become a member of ASEAN in 81. What happened?
No, 67.
67.
67 days, waited for 4 days.
Yeah, actually, what I...
No, and in 81 they were all the more enthusiastic and they have publicly done it. 67 they tried. India did not come in the way of Sri Lanka becoming a member of ASEAN. Secondly, India and Pakistan were taken as sectoral dialogue partners of ASEAN together. But India became a full dialogue partner before Pakistan. We didn't ask ASEAN not to do that. So that this assumption every time that anything which does not happen, India has not done it, or India should do it, is very interesting, particularly from the neighboring countries. In BIMSTEC, we have done our best to take Myanmar to SAARC. You were saying SAARC and ASEAN should be. We've done our best. In BIMSTEC, we would be very happy if Laos and Cambodia joins, as Nepal and Bhutan have joined. India took the initiative to take Nepal and Bhutan in BIMSTEC. There is absolutely no resistance from India to widen the scope of the regional groupings or probably create additional engagement points in one way or the other. So please don't have this assumption that either India is not doing what it cannot do. Sri Lanka would be led by its own foreign policy priorities. And
you may know, not only Sri
So
Lanka,
let-
like a lot of India's neighbors have this idea of the big brother and the small country.
well,
And
we
I
can't
think that's
have
what is,
if we are large in size and you take us as a big brother. Big brother is a Western concept. It's not an Oriental concept at all. Oriental concept is elder brother, and it makes a hell of a difference between these two words as to how they are being used. I mean, if you have that perception, go ahead, live with it. There is nothing which India can do about it. Anyway, on China again, because I raised this point earlier, on China again, the problem is that, look, China is now very uncomfortable with the US reassertion in the region. The best way for China should be to befriend the countries of the region. What has China done? China has done 2-3 things very significantly. Picked up the trouble with Japanese, with the Vietnamese, with the Philippines, problems which did not exist earlier in as serious a manner, and delayed the negotiations with India on the border. Now, if that is being done, then all these countries would have second thoughts. And look at the US policy perspectives on pivot, which he mentioned. All the American policymakers are saying, oh, all the ASEAN countries, all the Southeast Asian countries, all the Asia Pacific countries are with us. The problem is not with India doing or not doing anything else, I think the Chinese policy should go ahead and probably take unconventional measures to instill confidence amongst the neighbors. There would be absolutely no way, why would they go, I mean, India and China have had no quarrel except 62. But anyway, this is a debate we can continue on.
Oh,
Yes, Ambassador and then.
in fact, what Professor Moni said anticipated my question. My question is to Sudhir that you mentioned that India's interest in this region, South Asia, is benign because we have no territorial claims or dispute in the region. And he proceeded to suggest that India and ASEAN has a convergence of insecurity arrangements in the area. And my question is, Can you elaborate on what sort of security interests that both India and ASEAN are converging? And in what way do you see that this convergence can move forward? Do you foresee a new ASEAN-Indian security arrangement? Or what do you see? As I recall that during the Vajpayee government period, the expanded Low-Peace policy was driven by two factors. One, of course, is the growing influence of China, Myanmar, and ASEAN. And secondly, was a concern during Vajpayee's time that we see a emergence of Islamic militancy in South Asia largely, and the possible link between South Asia and subcontinent links. And therefore, the fear of Islamic arcs stretching from Afghanistan, Pakistan, South Asia. Do these perceptions still change, or do you see a new element in India's security perception of the region? And this leads to a question.
Okay. I just one point, because you mentioned this word democracy a lot, and I was at an event with Dr. Raghuram Rajan in April, where Dr. Rajan had mentioned that India is the example of, they're trying to show that India's democracy and development go hand in hand. So do you see India as trying to promote a certain model of development? Because here in Southeast Asia, we talked about the Chinese model with strongmen at the top controlling, then you talk about the politics, whereas in a democratic system it was democracy and development go in hand. So it's just a interesting thought, because you've mentioned democracy and the democratization of Southeast Asia as a driving force in foreign policy.
Anyone else? Yep.
So you seem to suggest that India and ASEAN should make some kind of common cause on the China issue. What exactly do you have in mind?
Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Yeah, well, I repeat what I said, Dr. Chakman, that our relationship has been benign. And India has not ever seen, or doesn't, in my view, I'm not in government now, but I know, I can fully believe that we do not look for any alliance. That alliance structure India has, right from the beginning, has a non-aligned policy, and so no question of any alliance, military alliance, of course, far from it. Now, there are a number of issues, security-related issues, both traditional security as well as non-traditional security issues, on which India and Southeast Asia have common concerns. You mentioned the issue of terrorism. Yes. There were at that time very deep concerns, and in fact there was a lot of evidence also of movement of terrorists and so on. So I think the specter of terrorism or threat of terrorism has not fully subsided yet. So that will remain one of them. Our concern for maritime security. I think both Southeast Asia and India depend a great deal on safety and security of maritime spaces around it. Whether it is for our trade, whether it is movement of the people, and therefore maritime security will remain a principal concern, and this was also focused during the summit last December in Delhi. Thirdly, India, and there are pandemics and there are the natural disasters and issues like this, in which India and Southeast Asia have also worked together. India and Southeast Asia do not think in terms of a counter against anyone, because this will be disastrous for both. This is a very flawed kind of concept, and I don't think that was at the back of mind at any stage when India and Southeast Asia talked of security convergence. Now, both India and Southeast Asia have legitimate defense needs. And if I see the defense budgets of Southeast Asian countries over the last 20 years or so, they have been very modest. In fact, countries like Indonesia, for example, has a very small defense budget as a percentage of GDP. For a size of a country like Indonesia, which is an archipelago, so Indonesia's navy is infinitesimally small. Now, India has a lot of possibilities and capabilities in this regard. Singapore has. Singapore can help India, India can help Indonesia. Likewise, you can have multiple cooperation in this region in the area of defense. We had the problem of piracy. Fortunately, I think now piracy in Southeast Asia is much less. It has all moved to the Gulf of Aden and Somalia. But that could be yet another issue. So both in terms of traditional as well as non-traditional areas, India and Southeast Asia have numerous areas of cooperation. That also partly answers Surya's questions of what I have in mind. What I have in mind is not joining forces to form a kind of an alliance against China or any third country. No, it is not. And it is to strengthen our own security apparatus and our defining our own security needs more coherently to each other. I don't think we have enough dialogue also on that, on security issues between the two countries. So we can meet now, for example, Myanmar. We had concerns in Myanmar over insurgency and so on. That we need to continue to discuss again over the years. With regard to democracy. Democracy and democratization of Southeast Asia, and you were asking me whether it is the Indian model of democracy and development. I don't think India is in any position or mood to talk about its model of development. We have enough problems of our own, and problems are really getting day by day more and more complex. So we do not want to suggest our model to anybody else. It is just that democracy came to India right from the time of its independence, and development is obviously India's first priority, being a developing country, a poor country with a huge challenge of alleviating poverty and underdevelopment. Now, countries of Southeast Asia or China have followed their own models. Now, I don't think there is any question of superiority of one model over the others. But it is just that in a representative kind of a government, which is a democratic government, you have better chance of addressing the issues of the common people. But it is not necessarily the only means, only model that one can prescribe. So I wouldn't say that India is really promoting or propagating any model.
Also depends on who's heading it, I think.
Any other strong, irresistible question left? No. Okay.
Do you think India is doing enough on this front? Because I do understand
Which front?
On this front of connecting itself to ASEAN, because ASEAN looks towards India, especially because of the South China Sea crisis, with a lot more expectations.
Is it?
Sorry. Yeah. There, at least individually, countries tend to look towards India with a lot of expectations that there would be some sort of support with Chinese threat in the sense in the South China Sea. How do you perceive that? And do you think India is doing enough? If yes, then there's nothing further. But what's more you think India should be doing?
Well, India has, I would list three, four very clear-cut things. One is India has made it very clear that its interests go beyond the Indian Ocean. They are also in the Pacific Ocean, including South China Sea. India has projects in the offshore areas of Vietnam, hydrocarbon exploration and extraction and so on. Indian naval ships visit very regularly to exercises with the navies of East Asia and Southeast Asia. India has huge trade interests in this region. Something like 50% of India's trade goes through Malacca Straits and South China Sea. Number two, India has repeatedly stressed the primacy of what is known as the freedom of navigation, FON, and uninterrupted access to international waters, including the SLOC, the sea lanes of communication. So India has made it very clear that there should be no hindrance to free navigation in South China Sea and uninterrupted movement of ships in the region which are for commercial and economic purpose. India has excellent relations with countries like Philippines and Vietnam and the claimant states of the South China Sea issue. That again doesn't mean that India is now directly in confrontation with China on South China Sea, because this is an issue between China on one hand and a few countries, 4 or 5 countries of South China, of Southeast Asia and Taiwan. But whatever India's main grounds for differences with China are on its own border in the Himalayas, similar considerations seem to be, kind of a parallel considerations seem to be operating in South China Sea as well. I mean, certain unilateralism on part of China or assertiveness on part of China. So that has been brought out by India in its own dealings with China, as well as in its own statements whenever Indian ministers visit South China Sea, visit Southeast Asia, or make statements in ARF or similar fora.
Well, thank you very much. I think we have had a good discussion on, before we conclude, maybe just 2 small points. One related to democracy. India has never ever supported democracy as an issue of foreign policy. It has responded to the situation, it has welcomed the rise of democracy, but never promoted and took an initiative to do that. I've done a whole book on India's foreign policy, the democracy dimension, and wherever India's strategic interests have converged with a democratic uprising, India has supported democracy, not otherwise, not democracy for the sake of democracy. And ASEAN has never ever looked, ASEAN as a group, as a resolution.
I was on individually and in the context of international law.
Yeah, but therefore ASEAN as a group has never done it. Individually, Vietnam has had a strategic relationship with India of long standing, much before these South China Sea disputes really arose. And it had a security dimension to that relationship, even then. So that has continued. Otherwise, nobody fights anybody's wars. More than that, it is the US which is offering itself for any kind of assistance, both to its allies and strategic partners. India is nowhere in the reckoning that if we have a trouble with China, you come and either rescue us, or India can even perform that kind of a role. So there are different dimensions of the expectations of ASEAN countries so far as their security strength and capabilities are concerned vis-a-vis India. And they are quite modest in the sense of training, some equipments, exercises, see what are the common, which Ambassador David listed, maritime, terrorism, natural disasters, so on and so forth, tsunamis. That's a very different cup of tea rather than facing the Chinese challenge in the region. Thank you very much for a very laid out, comprehensive presentation on the subject. And I think some of the aspects like democracy and diversity still needs to be woven into many of the analysis which India-ASEAN, with an India-ASEAN focus, is being done either in this region or I would say even on India. Thanks everybody. We have some tea or coffee waiting for us, but before that I have a very pleasant duty to perform.
to give these books to Ambassador Devry as a token of appreciation on the part of ISAS.